Okay, so like, picture this, right? You're holding a balloon, bright red balloon, ready to celebrate something, anything.
It's a pretty universal symbol of, joy,
Like,
celebration.
totally. But have you ever actually like stopped and thought about how that balloon, how that rubber thing even exists?
It's not magic, that's for sure. But it is a process, and you might be surprised how much precision goes into it.
And that's what we're diving deep into today. Rubber dipping machine operator.
Ah, the unsung heroes of, well, a lot of everyday stuff, really.
Right? Like, I had no idea. But we've got these excerpts from RoleCatcher. It's a career platform.
Okay, yeah, I've seen their stuff.
They go into like the nitty-gritty of what this whole manufacturing role is about, and it's way more than just, like the name makes it sound, dipping things in rubber.
Way more to it. I mean, think about it. These operators, they're the first line for so many objects. Balloons, gloves, even some medical supplies start with this process.
It really is like a hidden world of manufacturing when you think about it. So the guide, it jumps into these core tasks, right? Dipping forms, mixing latex, weighing samples. And at first I'm like, okay, that almost sounds, I don't know, too simple.
Deceptively simple.
Yes,
Yep.
because then they get into the details, the precision involved, and it's like, oh, this is where it gets cool.
Right. There's this whole fascinating chemistry element that comes into play. Like, the guide mentions that if the weight of a latex sample is even slightly off, the operator has to adjust the latex or ammonia levels.
Wait, hold on. Ammonia? What does ammonia have to do with rubber?
It's all about controlling how the latex behaves.
Yeah.
Basically, ammonia, it acts as a stabilizer, and it helps to speed up something called vulcanization, which is what gives the rubber its, strength, its elasticity.
Okay, so there's a reason. It's not just like random chemicals lying around. So it's this balancing act between what the chemicals, the weight,
Exactly.
but what makes that weight so important?
Okay, so think about it like this. You have your latex coating, right? If it's too thin, you end up with a super weak product. Like, imagine that balloon again. It's just going to burst way too easily.
Oh, yeah, makes sense.
But then if it's too thick, on the other hand, now you're wasting material, which obviously for the company cuts into profits. No one wants that.
So it's not just about being detail oriented, which I'm sure is a huge part of it, but you also need to like understand the how and the why, the science behind it. So basically, every time they dip something, it's like a mini science experiment.
Yeah, you could say that. And that level of like precision, they need it every single day. It's a lot.
And that actually, that makes me think about the whole work environment, because the
Yeah.
guide, it does mention, factories, probably some noise going on, maybe fumes.
It's manufacturing, right? It's not
Uh,
always going to be pristine. Safety gear is definitely a must. You're talking gloves, masks, all that.
yeah, you got to be protected, especially with those chemicals and the machinery. Makes total sense.
Safety first, for sure. But then the guide gets into like the pros and cons of the career itself. And that's where it gets interesting, especially, if someone's thinking long term.
Okay, hit me with it. What's the good, the bad, the ugly?
Well, the good news is job stability is pretty much a guarantee.
Mm-hmm.
As long as we're using rubber products, and let's be real, that's not going away anytime soon, these skills, they're going to be in demand.
That's true. I mean, think about everything that uses rubber.
Exactly. And because it's such a specific skill set, you can get really good at it. Like, become a real expert in this niche area. I actually loved how the guide put it. They said you could be a, get this, latex whisperer.
That's kind of amazing. I love it. So, mastering the machines, the chemistry, becoming the latex whisperer. But what about like moving up the ranks? Is that a thing?
That's where it gets a little, I guess you could say, limited. The guide mentions that advancement opportunities, they can be a little harder to come by, especially, smaller companies, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it makes sense. Fewer management positions, longer climbs, all that.
Exactly. So it might be more about lateral moves, like specializing in a certain type of dipping or a specific product line, rather than, huge promotions.
So not a deal breaker, but definitely something to keep in mind. But the guide also said there are some other paths, like becoming a supervisor or moving into quality control.
Right. Those are sort of the natural progressions, yeah. And for someone who's really into the, I guess, the science-y side of it all, they could potentially move into research and development.
Oh, see, now that's what I'm talking about. Experimenting with new types of rubber, more sustainable materials, like pushing the boundaries.
Exactly. And all those tiny adjustments we talked about, those become even more important in R&D. Think about it. Even a small change to a formula could mean a whole new set of dipping instructions.
That's a really good point. And the guide, they actually had this whole example profile of like an entry-level operator, and it really highlighted those essential skills, like you were saying, attention to detail, following those safety protocols, like it's nobody's business.
Oh, yeah, those are non-negotiables.
Right. But what I thought was really interesting was it mentioned commitment to cleanliness and machine maintenance. I was like, huh, okay, so it's more than just.
It's about taking ownership, understanding that even something like cleaning the equipment, it directly impacts the final product.
So it all ties back together.
100%. It's about preventing contamination, making sure things run smoothly, less downtime. It's all connected.
Man, we really took a deep dive on this whole rubber dipping thing. It makes you appreciate the people behind the scenes, right?
Okay.
They're making all this stuff happen and we don't even realize.
It's so true. And that's kind of the big takeaway for me, I think. You're not just building a thing, you're problem solving, you're keeping things consistent. It's a whole process.
Yeah. And speaking of process, the guide mentioned this whole thing about eco-friendly materials, which I thought was interesting.
Oh, right, yeah. Consumers want sustainability, so of course manufacturers are looking at new materials, new processes all the time.
It's like, how do you take those skills and apply them to something totally new?
Exactly. Especially when you're talking about, a new kind of rubber, one that's better for the planet. That's a challenge.
It's not even just keeping up with the current technology. It's like, you gotta be ahead of it.
You said it. And
Yeah.
for someone with that eye for detail who gets the science and the machinery, the possibilities are huge.
Totally. I mean, honestly, it's amazing how much we learned about rubber dipping machine operators just from like these RoleCatcher excerpts. I feel like I had no idea.
Right. It's like this hidden world.
We started with how are rubber things made?
Yeah.
And it turned into this whole thing about precision and chemistry.
And the people.
Mm.
Like without the skill, none of it happens.
Next time I see, I don't know, a rubber band or a balloon, even those dishwashing gloves, I'm gonna think about this whole process.
See? That's what I love about a good deep dive. You never know what you're going to learn.
Totally. All right, until next time.